If I may have your attention, please, we're about to begin our service. I'm going to ask that everyone please be seated. I will also ask that everyone please take a moment to turn your cell phones to their silent mode. Please make sure that they are on silence. Conducting our service today is Rabbi Rachel Kaplan Marks.
Friends, we are here today to honor the beautifully lived life of your dear friend, your cousin, wife, mother, and grandmother, Sherry Flangel. And so I'm going to invite the mourners to please rise, those who are wearing the ribbons. While the pain of missing Sherry is almost unbearable, the gratitude that you share for having loved her and having been loved by her is what will sustain you. For Sherry's life that united you, for her love which death cannot sever, for her companionship that you shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of her heart and mind that brought you joy and happiness, we give thanks to God. For all these and more, we are grateful. In his anguish, Job cried out, Adonai natan va'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. At this time, we turn to our tradition, and we search for words that might offer us some measure of comfort. From Psalm 15. Adonai mi yagor ba'ohalecha, mi yishkon behar kodshecha. Adonai, who may abide in your house? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may do not retract, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. For more generations than we can count, when we gather together in times of mourning, we recite the words of Psalm 23. Its message, though ancient, is ever relevant, because even when we walk through the shadow of death, even in our darkest times, we are not alone. I'll recite the psalm first in Hebrew, and then I'll invite you to read along with me the English translation in your packet. Adonai ro'i lo echsar, Binot deshet yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yinahaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni b'maglei tzedek lema'an shemo, gam ki elech begates al mavet, lo irara, ki ata imadi, shivtecha uminshantecha hema yanachamuni, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai, dishanta v'shemen roshi, kosi ravaya, ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yamei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai, la'orech yamim. Let's read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The author Kohelet, otherwise known as Ecclesiastes, teaches us that there is a season, a moment for every experience. There's a moment to be silent, and there is a moment to speak. So it really is an honor to first call on Sherry's granddaughters, Allison and Rachel, to come forward to share some words.
GMS, if you didn't know her name, Grandma Sherry, was a loving, positive, and strong woman. She always knew exactly what to say and do in every situation, even if it wasn't exactly what you wanted to hear. My favorite memories of her were when she would tell me crazy stories from her past and all the drama with her friends. She always had some gossip to share. Before she passed away, I sang Blue Skies to her, which was the song she would always play in the car with Allison, Luke, and I. She actually started singing it with me. Even in her worst times, she didn't forget our favorite song to sing together. She always supported me no matter what. She had unconditional love for her family. She always stayed positive no matter how bad she was feeling. I will always look up to her and remember how strong and positive she was. Even though she's not here anymore, she will always be with me in my heart. I'm so happy I got to spend as much time with her as I did. While I'm extremely sad that I will not be able to see her again or FaceTime her 3 times a day as I normally do, I'm glad she's no longer suffering. I'm so lucky that this amazing woman was my grandmother.
GMS was not one to talk about boys. While she loved to spell gossip about scandal and divorce, I never really talked to her about my personal life, my love life especially. But at the end of this past summer, my grandma and I went on a lunch date together. And at this point, she was somewhat immobile, and it was pretty hard for her to eat out at restaurants, so I felt pretty special being able to get her out of the house. GMS insisted we go to the restaurant inside Neiman Marcus at Northbrook Court. And she wanted to do this so we could look at the shoes on the way in, which is what we always did together. And we also had the famous popovers, which are delicious. And as the two of us were sitting down at lunch discussing what classes I'd be taking in the fall, GMS turned to me, looked at me in the eyes, and goes, "All right, enough with the small talk. Give me the lowdown on all your boys." And I burst out laughing. As I was sitting next to my grandma, who fiercely rocked her oxygen tank at the table, we began gossiping about ex-boyfriends, crushes, and everything in between. Grandma Sherry was not only an ear to listen to at any time, but she was the rock that we all turned to, even me, to discuss my current boy drama. As I'm continuing to grow older, becoming a strong and independent woman are two of the most important qualities that continue to be emphasized to me. I cannot think of a more perfect example of what a strong woman should be. My grandma is the definition. Through the worst parts of her illness, there was not a single time I could sense pain while I was talking to GMS, because she put her own discomfort and agony aside to put my comfort first. I can't even fathom having courage as forceful as this. Everyone sitting in this room loved Grandma as a friend, as a cousin, or as a family member. And I'm so lucky to be standing here, proud enough to say that Sherry Flangel was my grandma. For lack of better words, it sucks that GMS is gone. And I've been dreading this day for the past 2 years as I've been at school. It pains me that the clock has finally struck. And as much heartache as I feel, as we all feel, GMS would look at me in the eyes, tell me to wipe my tears, clear my throat, stand up straight and pull it together. And she wouldn't say this out of rudeness or out of hostility. She would say it because she taught me how to be strong, stay brave, and love fiercely.
We'll hear next from Sherry's son, Brian.
That's a tough one to follow up. Chip off the old block. So as I look out at the room and see all of my mom's nearest and dearest, it reminds me of all the funerals I've gone to over the years. One of the first questions you would ask me, is it crowded? And I'm not sure what that had to do with the memory of whoever it is that we lost, but I always said yes, it was very well attended. So looking out at this room, again, with all of her nearest and dearest, I think she would be pleased to see all of you here. So if there is a heaven, she's up there right now with my grandmother and some of her aunts and cousins like my Aunt Eve, my Grandma Ruthie, Bernice, Maxine, and she's sort of making a mental checklist of all of you in the room. So she could say something to you when she sees you one day, hopefully not for many more years. There may be also some off-color comments about some of the outfits, because as some of her Nordstrom colleagues could attest to, nothing bothered her more than a poorly matched, ill-fitting outfit. About 18 years ago, I was given the impossible task of trying to eulogize my grandmother, Ruthie, Sherry's mother, a little person with a gigantic persona. And I think there's a lot of similarities there, because as I mentioned all those years ago, when you have somebody that is that iconic, you can sometimes recognize them by just one name: Oprah, Gandhi, Prince, Ruthie. And now it's time to add Sherry to that list. Because while there may be several Susans or Jills or Marlenes in this room that require some further identifying factor depending on the context in which you're using the name, there was only one Sherry. And there always will be just one Sherry. There's no mistaking who you meant when you mentioned that name. And that was one of her greatest qualities. She was just unique. This force of nature, this one-of-a-kind presence in all of our lives. I'll never understand how she managed to talk to so many of you every single day, but she did. It was just part of your daily routine. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you get dressed, and you talk to Sherry, where she would offer support and advice in just about every aspect of life. And more often than not, her advice was spot on. Me, on the other hand, I declined more than my fair share of her calls, and for that I probably owe you an apology. I'm sorry, Mom. But in the last year, I did not decline those calls. I've never seen a more dedicated mother, mother-in-law, friend, cousin, wife, grandmother than my mom. She was loyal and generous and honest and always told you what you wanted to hear, or what you needed to hear, not what you wanted to hear. Which was an extension of that love and loyalty. And she has been that way her whole life, which explains why so many of you are so upset over her passing. She leaves a void that frankly is never going to be filled. I used a lot of words to describe my mom over the years, some of which are not really suitable for this setting, but it wasn't until the last 18 months or so that I added a new word to describe her, and that is fearless. Everybody in this room knows that when she got her diagnosis, this was going to be the end result. It's unfortunate, but we all knew it was just a question of time. But you never would have known it from talking to her. She never had a bad day. I've never seen someone so positive and strong and full of happiness despite being so sick. And up until about 2 weeks ago, I was there with my family. Her friend Fern was there, and we were reminiscing about things that happened 35 years ago, and she was chiming in and adding to the conversation and laughing and joking. And up until that point, it was still her. And shortly after that, it wasn't. I tried to get a rise out of her. I told her I brought the dogs in. They had an accident on the floor, but nothing. And that's when I knew she was gone. But up until that point, like I said, she never had a bad day. And that fearlessness is something that I hope to remember and carry with me the rest of my life. So remembering, and she was always able to make us laugh under the most unbearable circumstances. So when I was trying to figure out what I was going to say today, I came across a quote from Nelson Mandela that said, "What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others." My mom made a difference to every person in this room. I could see it in your faces. And I know that very shortly, your tears will be replaced with smiles and laughter because her memory will continue to be a blessing and a source of joy forever. Thank you.
Sherry Flangel was a force of nature. She had a real presence about her. For a woman who was physically small, she, like her mother, left a big impression on so many people. As so many of you know firsthand, Sherry was a devoted and wonderful friend. Her phone rang off the hook each and every morning as she checked in with dozens of you, her dear friends. Sherry had room in her heart to be concerned with everyone's welfare, and she had room in her mind to keep track of everything, all of the details that were going on with all of the friends and family in her life. Sherry possessed a keen understanding of the nuances of relationships, and she enjoyed her station of being the hub of the many different circles, from childhood, mahjong, the cousins, and I'm sure I'm leaving many out. So many of these friends cherished Sherry, and they rallied around her, showing their love at the end of her inspirational battle with cancer. Sherry's ability to keep track of the details, to be in the know, extended beyond her own circles of beloved friends and family. She was always ahead of the curve. Sherry's family shared how back in 1984, Sherry helped to plan a conference for the business, and she booked a keynote speaker named Oprah Winfrey. You have to understand, 1984 was 2 years before the Oprah Winfrey Show premiered. Sherry was always very stylish and put together, usually dressed in her signature color, black. She knew where to dine and what bag to carry, what music to listen to, and which shows to see. She was full of life. She loved dining out, attending live concerts and theater. Brian and Melissa even remember their parents dancing disco in the basement. Sherry was adventurous and open-minded. She appreciated what so many different cultures had to offer by way of arts and cuisine. And Sherry didn't keep her gifts of sense and fashion, dining, and entertainment to herself. Rather, Sherry joyfully shared them broadly. She understood people. She knew what would resonate with them. Sherry was the source for all of this information because she wanted the people around her to enjoy the very best. So it was fitting that Sherry had such a successful career at Nordstrom in the Encore department. Sherry was a great saleswoman because she was honest. Her clients trusted her to make them look and feel their best. Sherry's family lovingly described her as the mayor of Nordstrom. Once the news spread of Sherry's illness and passing, there was and continues to be an outpouring not just from her close family and friends, but from her coworkers and customers as well. As you've heard, Sherry had some strong opinions, that she would directly share those with the people that she loved, and usually her opinions were right. At the heart of her opinions was the truth that Sherry always wanted what was best for those around her. And what mattered most to Sherry was her beloved family. She was the only child of her parents, Ruthie and Milton Perlman, Zichronam Livracha. Sherry was the Queen of Sheba. Her father was outgoing and generous, and her mother was larger than life. Sherry shared so many of her parents' best qualities. As an only child, Sherry was exceptionally close with her cousins, aunts, and uncles, and this continued all through her life. As Sherry's parents and other beloved family members aged, she took care of them. She was there for the people she loved in good times and in bad. And there was nobody that she loved more than her husband, Erwin, her children, Brian and Laura, and of course, Melissa, and her grandchildren, Allison, Rachel, and Luke. Sherry and Erwin met at a party when Sherry was 17, and Erwin was already in the hot dog business in Lincoln Park West. At the party, Erwin asked Sherry out, and a year later, he presented her with a giant wrapped box. Inside the box was a smaller box, and another, and another, and another, and another, until finally Sherry got to the box with the engagement ring. The happy couple were married on December 24th, 1965, and remained married for 57 years. Theirs was a marriage full of love and joy. On Sherry and Erwin's 50th anniversary, the family had dinner at the restaurant. That's where the hotel was located. And they even got to peek into the ballroom where they exchanged vows all those years before. Their home was a loud one, as Sherry accommodated for Erwin's hearing. Make no mistake, though, their home was loving. In their 57 plus years together, Sherry and Erwin never went to sleep angry with one another. They never held any kind of grudges. And as the two grew older, Sherry heard for Erwin, and Erwin, you saw for Sherry. You complimented each other in every way. As a mother, Sherry was loving, loyal, and present. In many ways, Sherry was traditional. When Brian and Melissa were young, Sherry stayed home to care for them. She made dinner each night and hosted Friday night dinners and Sunday brunches for the extended family as well. She was a great entertainer, and she taught her children how to entertain as well. Sherry kept a very clean house. Brian and Melissa would never have dared to leave an unmade bed or crumbs on the counter. Sherry was tough in a way that taught her children to have a sense of responsibility. And she was devoted to all of Brian and Melissa's activities. She was present, cheering from the sidelines or clapping in the audience as the kids skated, acted, and played basketball. And Sherry was just as present for her grandchildren's activities as well. Sherry and Brian shared a birthday, October 11th, I believe. Sherry and Brian knew how to push one another's buttons. They had a kind of playful banter that was so because of the love they shared as mother and son. Sherry loved Laura and had a really special relationship, not just with Laura, but with the whole Foxman family. The Flangels and Foxmans treasured being together for 1 week each summer in South Haven, Michigan. Over time, the two families became like one big family, sharing not only that week in the summer together, but all of the holidays as well. And Sherry and Melissa were not just mother and daughter. They were exceptionally close. The two talked countless times each day. Melissa and Sherry were confidants and best friends. This special relationship mirrored the relationship Sherry had with her mother, Ruthie. Melissa not only loved her mother, but she respected her and looked up to her as well. As much as Sherry loved being a mom, she really loved being a grandma. But Sherry wasn't just any grandma. She was GMS. She was a hip grandma. GMS was loving and supportive. She found a way to really connect with each of her 3 grandchildren. She was a great communicator. She would call and text, making sure that each of you had an ongoing conversation with her. She made sure that each of you, her grandchildren, knew how loved you were, and you showed her that same love in return. Sherry's favorite song to sing was Blue Skies by Irving Berlin. Her grandchildren especially remember her singing in the car. Noticing the days hurrying by, when you're in love, my, how they fly. Blue days, all of them gone, nothing but blue skies from now on. How fitting these lyrics are. Sherry enjoyed all of her days on this earth. She was in love with her friends, with her family, and with her life. We pray now that Sherry's soul be at peace, as it is bound up with the eternal, sheltered and cared for under God's wing. I invite you to please rise. El Male Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamatzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Utehorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Sima Devora Bat Milton Varachel, Shehelcha La'olama, Baal Harachamim Yastireha, Beseter Knafav La'olamim, Vitzror Bitzror HaChayim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'tanuach B'shalom Al Mishkava, V'nomar Amen. God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of our loved one who has gone into eternity, Sherry Flangel, find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace, together with the holy and pure whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold her close to you forever, so that her soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May she find a home with you, and may she rest in peace. Together we say, Amen. Please be seated.
The interment service is going to be private for the family. Upon exiting the sanctuary, we are going to ask that everyone please go directly to your cars and exit the parking lot. Shiva is also being observed privately for the family due to health concerns. At this time, I will ask for everyone to please rise and stand in place. We're going to ask for the pallbearers to please come forward. We'll ask everyone to please remain standing while the family and the casket are escorted from the sanctuary.